गरिब परिवारमा जन्मेको दलित भएको कारणले समाजले चाहिँ सबैले घृणा गर्थ्यो। मेरो गाउँमा चाहिँ एउटा इनार थियो, त्यो इनारमा पानी भर्न जानु पर्थ्यो मैले, अनि त्यसमा चाहिँ सबैजनाले भरिसक्थ्यो अनि मेरो पालो आउँदैन थियो, कहिले पनि अर्को आउँथ्यो, बाल्टी हाल्थ्यो, अर्को आउँथ्यो।
मेरो नाम बाहादुर सुनार, ब्यास 13, कटन टोल। छुत त म चाहिँ मान्दिनँ, गर्नु हुँदैन भन्ने मेरो चाहिँ ऊ हो। हामीलाई चाहिँ अब छुत त बेसरी दबाब थियो नि पहिला त, गर्न त अब हामीले छोको नखाने, अब हामीले देख्यो भने छाछुसुसु गर्ने, त्यस्तो अब अलि त्यो अन्य जातिहरूले अहिले धेरै परिवर्तन भएको छ, अहिले सबैले बुझ्नु भएको छ र पनि भित्री रूपमा चाहिँ अझै पनि छ।
The first time I knew that I was inferior, I probably was 18 months old. I knew that we were untouchables. Untouchability means actually untouchability. You cannot touch them.
In the Hindu regions of Nepal, even in the 21st century, there is still a caste-based system in place. Nepalese are recognized among themselves by castes, which is a complex social system that combines elements of endogamy, culture, occupation, political power, social class and tribe affiliation. Dalits, who face discrimination in accordance with this system, are restricted to use public amenities, are deprived of economic opportunities and are neglected and treated unequally by the society they live in and by the state itself. The word Dalit has various terms and they include Paninashalani, means water polluting, Ashut, means untouchables, Doom, Perigonate, and Tayojat, means low caste and many others. This term represents an eternal struggle for equality and equity. Caste-based untouchability addresses the discrimination against the community whose touch is presumed to pollute and needs to be cleansed. This pyramid presents what is the place of Dalits in the Nepalese caste system. Dalits, called the untouchables, are given degrading jobs and are mostly exploited and oppressed by the society. The current situation of Dalits in Nepal still remains very problematic. The Dalit community continuously suffered from political, social and economic discrimination. Professional occupations are still dominated by the higher castes. Their living conditions are very low and the government's efforts to change their situations are limited and not sufficient. For the purposes of understanding the situation of a Dalit community member in Nepal, we asked Mr. Krishna bahadur Sanaa, who has been actively engaged in the protection of Dalits' rights for a long time and who have worked professionally with many NGOs in Nepal, about his life and experience in this regard.
I am here today with Mr. Krishna, who is actively involved in the Dalit disability rights movement in Nepal. Mr. Krishna is going to explain us from his perspective how it is to represent the Dalit community and at the same time work in a close cooperation with the Nepalese government. Before we start, Mr. Krishna, please explain us what was your career journey and how did you manage to become a secretary in an executive board of National Association of Physical Disabled Nepal?
First of all, thank you so much, Victoria, for this opportunity and having a study on Dalits of Nepal also. It's quite important and I would say very rarely documented the information and facts and figures from the Dalits perspective. Okay, let me begin my very short the information. As you said, actually I am a person with disability. I have a physical disability and I do belong with a Dalit community. So being a person with physical disability from Dalit community and even from the most poor and marginalized community, my childhood, actually I didn't have a very good childhood memory or the childhood history because I faced lots of social barriers and people's, especially the attitudinal barriers and all this kind of exclusion. But despite of all this, and I managed somehow to go to the schools, government school in my childhood, and then I did good. And after completing the school level certification exam, I'm not from the Kathmandu, from where I am right now speaking. I'm quite far from here. I'm originally from far west part of Nepal, and I used to live in a grassroots level. And at that time, and when I completed my school level certificate examination, and then I just got one opportunity to come in Kathmandu. The Kathmandu is the capital city of Nepal. And I got one scholarship for my higher education, and that really changed completely my all career, the future career with this. And then when I came in Kathmandu, I studied for higher education with the support of this scholarship scheme. And after a certain time of my the higher level education completion, and I realized myself being a Dalit and from Dalit community, full tired of the caste-based discrimination, untouchability, marginalized and exclusion, and that's really actually pushed me to get engaged in the kind of disabled people organization from where I can make from where I can just make my voice raise and then can be mainstream. So this is how I began with my career.
Keeping in mind your involvement in the National Youth Policy Monitoring Youth Committee and then in the Youth Advocacy Nepal, can you please explain us what role did you play there and what were your main tasks?
So what I realized, especially when I joined with the National Association of the Physical Disabled Nepal as a secretary, and this is completely a association of only the person with physical disability at national level. And while working with them, and I got one opportunity for an international exposure in South Korea, and it was completely focused in youth with disabilities, right? And since I'm being myself a youth with disability from a Dalit community, and after coming back from the South Korea, and we just had a kind of one platform with this youth advocacy in Nepal, and this is a quite different platform than other usual the youth-led organization. The reason is this youth advocacy in Nepal is composed of all the marginalized and excluded communities, youth who do represent from sexual and minorities groups, Dalits, and themselves from the women, and also from the disability community. And that's really inspired me to get engaged and involved in this organization, and where I was nominated as a vice president. And the main purpose of this organization when I was there, and we all used to collectively advocate for the youth with the youth perspective from the marginalized and excluded groups youth perspective in our overall youth movement. So that's how I engaged there, and then I just got involved there and then contributed in that way. And while working and engaging with this youth advocacy in Nepal, and one of the situation, one of the time that just came as an opportunity is there was also a national youth policy, but government at the meantime was at the stage of reviewing it from all the broader perspective with developing new 2020 youth vision with 5 years, 10 years long youth vision also. And that was a kind of very good opportunity for all of us as an youth advocacy in Nepal. And I was nominated there as a youth with disability, and mainly to contribute from disability rights perspective. But that was not only from disability youth, but also from the excluded communities, so Dalits. So being a Dalit with a disability, I contributed a lot there to well frame the national youth policy, where it has categorized this the excluded youth as a primary highly prioritized youth group, and also Youth Vision 2020 at that time, that also came up with a different scheme of programs to address our issues. So that's how I engaged there in national youth policy, youth advocacy in Nepal.
What were the policies that you were working on?
Yeah, but let's say, one thing is, I'm not only confining my youth activism in one sector, just particularly in youth only, or not only in terms of disability, or not only for Dalit, but I'm trying to engaged my youth activism in all this sector collectively. So that's why the policies that really matters to me and all are is like national youth policy, even Dalit rights policies and programs that directly matters to us, and also some of the policies, especially that are disability focused. For example, let's say we have recently a Disability Rights Act that has been promulgated, and also the few years ago there was a policy promulgated by government on accessibility guidelines, and also very currently the government has come up with one policies on for the implementation of Disability Rights Act. So these are some very key policies where I have been engaged to advocate to make it more inclusive from all the perspective, and as well as for its effective reinforcement for the effective implementation of all these promulgated policies and laws.
How the Nepalese government deals with the issue of discrimination of Dalits in Nepal.
In case of Dalit rights movement, first of all, one of the very important the information is that Dalit rights movement is one of the oldest the social movement in Nepal comparing to other any kinds of social movement. Okay, however, the way Dalits here in Nepal have not been able to have such a huge transformative change in our lives, especially talking from the perspective of this caste-based discrimination and untouchability. So, Nepal government has already come up with one caste-based Discrimination and Untouchability Act in 2011, 11 or 12, something like that. This is one of the very much important policy for us, act for us, and which has really contributed a lot to reduce, I would say reduce the caste-based discrimination and untouchability cases in Nepal. But it's not happening in a way as much as we all were expecting. Okay, and another policy for us is definitely, I could say, our new constitution, which is very recently, I would say it's been already more than 6 years, 5 years for us that we got new constitution in 2015, and this constitution has come up with many the Dalit related rights and provision in special articles that has been provision and written in the constitution, which are also the fundamental rights. So Dalit rights are recognized as fundamental rights in the constitution. So these are some constitutional provision for us. And beside that, now we have been completely in a federal structure. So we have a federal government, and then after we have a provincial government, and then we go trickle down to the local government. So when we talk about the provincial government, in terms of provincial government, and each provincial government has to promulgate, has to develop their own the policy and program for Dalits community. Okay, so till the date, 2 provinces, we have total 7 provinces out of 7. Now 2 provinces have already come up with the special Dalit rights and program to address this caste-based discrimination and untouchability issues in Nepal. And if I have to talk in terms of local governments, there are so many unclarities and gaps, I would say, and even there are still the caste-based discrimination and untouchability cases have been happening every day. And you might have heard that the human rights situation of Dalits in Nepal is really worst. And one of the very, the upsetting news for us is that we have a Dalit commission at federal level. And this Dalit commission has not been fully functional yet due to the lack of timely appointment of its representatives due to the political, I would say, political tension, right? the political, it would be kind of a political recruitment, appointment, and due to the political power structure and their one debate within the political parties, it has been remained vacant. So it's been already 5 years for us. The constitution has been promulgated, and but the constitutional body, which is the main body for Dalits rights, and this is still this is 8 empty. So this is being fully, I would say, dysfunctional 8, and that is really impacting a lot for the Dalit community's rights.
Based on the continuous discrimination of Dalits in Nepal and the day-to-day struggle that Dalits have to face with, it is definitely impressive how you overcame this issue and have been actively engaged in the fight for Dalits' rights. How can you describe your life as a person with a physical disability from the Dalit community?
This is a very genuine question, Victoria, I would say, because being a Dalit, just being a person with a disability from Dalit community, I have already explained you at the beginning that I had to face lots of barriers in the society, not just only being a Dalit, but also being a disabled people. So this issue has to be seen and analyzed from the intersection perspective, right? I'm a Dalit, a man with a disability. So when I have to have access to the government resources and services, and even the employment and livelihood opportunities, so my all these access will be decided by my the last surname, whether I'm from, which caste I'm from, or which caste do I belong to. And that's really makes the exclusion for me. And then another aspect, if I'm also considered as a Dalit, but that comes again the questions with my disability. Okay, can he do it, or whether he can do it or not? So that's really this is the reason that why I have been excluded from my basic school education since the childhood, where I started my school education only at the age of 8 years old, not at the beginning, and that has really impacted me a lot, because 8 years has been already too late for me, and I had to struggle a lot to go to my the village school, where there used to be many physical barriers and no accessible environment for me to access school toilet and school taps and even the classrooms. And despite of all this also, I used to be viewed more from the Dalit community's perspective. And so when I used to do a very good study in my school level, and the community people, my society, the people from the so-called higher caste community, even from the school teachers, they used to be they used to criticize me from. They used to see me more from the Dalit community, and then they used to see me more from the discriminatory perspective, right? And that's why I had to fight a lot, even for myself, to get equally be treated with other students. So that's my experience. And even after completion of my school level education, even in higher education, do you know, still for us here in Kathmandu, though it is a highly educated city or highly advanced city that we could say being a capital city, we don't find the rented room for us being a Dalit. So that's a very, very bitter aspect, is still bitter fact till the date. And whenever I have to explore my the rented room for my stay and do my, just to take forward my career, and because of my caste and my disability, and the house owner always used to take me very negatively. One aspect, I am a Dalit, so he should not be given because I am considered as an impure person. And in another aspect, being a disabled, the house owner used to consider me, used to take me as a person who cannot maintain the sanitation, and that's because of what I very rarely used to get. Even right now also, till the date, I used to get very hardly the new rooms. So these are the barriers that I have been facing with my everyday life. being a Dalit and disabled. And even with the employment opportunity also, I have the same struggles. I have struggled a lot, So there are some provision for the Dalits and even with the disability. And because of that also, though I tried in many international development agency and other non-governmental organization or private sectors, and as I said you already, and this opportunity used to be decided by my last surname. And when even if I get opportunity, then I used to be judged more from the my activeness, whether I'm fit or not. And definitely, if they see the physical structure, then I'm not, and then definitely it makes me another kind of exclusion. So it's a kind of a very it's a kind of a very serious the exclusion that I have been facing in my everyday life.
What should the Nepalese government do in order to provide Dalits with basic rights and equality?
That's kind of a very critical questions, and it should be in my experience, my lived experience. What it tells is we need to view the things not from the very small section, but we have to see it more from the broader picture. Okay, so that's why what I would suggest, the tokenistic approach of inclusion from the quota or reservation system for the Dalits community, this is not going to work for the longer term. Yeah, there might be some contribution in terms of change for a shorter time, but for a longer time, this is not going to bring us just a lasting change. The major problem is for us, especially for the Dalit community, is caste-based discrimination and untouchability. And despite of having all those the policies, acts, and even the constitutional rights and other constitutional bodies, the number of cases of caste-based discrimination and untouchability practices are not reduced at all yet. So what I would suggest, the first thing is, I think the political mainstreaming of the Dalit communities to have equal participation in power structure, right? So if Dalit people get equal participation or their representation with other non-Dalit community people in the decision-making process through the political participation, then I think that would really bring huge changes in the lives of Dalit communities. That's one point that I would I see it. And another aspect is we need to see the whole social structure. So our social structure is completely we have a discriminatory social structure. This structure has to be actually destructed, and then we have to reconstruct it. Okay, for reconstructing, I think the state, the government has to be ready to completely demolish the caste-based system. So if we really demolish the caste-based system, and there will be no any the discrimination based on caste, and then that will bring a very huge transformative change in the lives of the Dalit community people. I think that's what I think, in my opinion.
Do you think that one day Dalits will be granted their rights?
So it's a kind of a conditional question for me. If we continue, okay, if we continue the same structure, same practices, without changing any one of the structure that is prevailing in our society, so definitely that is not going to bring any kind of changes in Dalits' lives, because it's been more than 1,000 years that we have been being discriminated based on our caste, just so-called caste, lower and upper caste. So if we really work in terms of changing our structure, system, and definitely that will bring a kind of the hope of rights to have equal rights for Dalit community people also in future. So it's a kind of, I would say, conditional. I'm not very much the optimistic in terms of keeping the same structure, system, and practices. Definitely, there will be nothing change.